Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
From the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Thank you guys for being here. Guys, I have been reminiscing a lot on the old days of the investigation, thinking about how far we've come. It's actually just unbelievable. It's actually unbelievable. And before you ask, yes, that sign is glowing like crazy. The reason is because it's a new sign. Look at how amazing this sign looks. Holy shit. I'll put a link in the chat to the Skunkworks people, guys. They sent me a new sign because they were displeased by the old one. And this thing is like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's sending out gravity waves by how powerful it is. Okay. Tonight, guys, I know I promised a part 2 of the nuclear secrets. That is coming. That is coming. But I just keep falling down new rabbit holes and finding more and more information out. And the big revelation on Wednesday was from Gary Stevenson, who at this point I'm pretty confident is an intelligence guy. I mean, it's just, I think that these guys that are engineers just become connected to the CIA, DIA, etc., just from the work that they do. And he was just spilling the beans, man, saying stuff that I had no idea about. Fact that, well, essentially what he said was that Ron Pandolfi put Bob Baker and his put Bob Baker basically on trial with the other scientists because Bob Baker may have been helping the Chinese too much because he was working with these Chinese guys to figure out high-frequency gravity wave detectors. So he put him on trial, which seemed crazy because Ron Pandolfi is the guy that I've been like pointing at as got to be one of the top CIA people who's been covering this stuff up. Though there are others for sure. And the other thing he said was that if you, in fact, I'm just going to play it. Why am I even saying it? Why am I not just playing it? Here we go.
There was another part of this that may have been related to secret sauce, which is this melt texturing on the outside of them. Yeah, and that's essentially, I believe it was putting one layer of a superconductor on top of another and then sintering, and you end up with kind of basically a bi-layer device.
Guys, does it freak anybody else out how Gary Stevenson's camera is like centering in on him while this is happening? Very cinematic. Why can my camera do that? I want my camera that just follows me around like his is just like. Anyway, this sounds a lot like the bismuth, what is it? Magnesium, bismuth, zinc that the UFO people, we have not talked about UFOs in a long ass time, chat. Like, if you think back, we have not talked about UFOs in a long time. This magnesium, bismuth, zinc sounds really similar to what, I mean, in theory, what Tim Ventura is talking about is like you singeing this stuff together. In our Josephson junction, we take a superconductor, an insulator, another superconductor. And just logically, like, oh, okay, that creates like this wall between them. And that's the same theory that was being proposed about how the UFOs fly around. The flying saucer discs, because they have like some kind of insulating barrier or something like that. So anyway, I just want to point out that similarity here.
Right. Or you might think of it almost like a
significant because there are certain bilayer devices. If you go from an S wave to a D wave, or vice versa, you could trigger a spin 2 transition, which would result in a graviton. So
Bro, I mean,
it could be
that part right
significant.
there.
And I've looked
I
at
didn't
Giorgio
go in.
Fontana's work.
Pause. That part right there just blew me away. I didn't know there were like S-type and D-type superconductors. I mean, how much is there to learn? How much is there to learn? A lot. Well, apparently, if you put these together and put an insulator between them, you can cause a spin-to transition. I do know what that means. Gravity wave. And a graviton is just a particle-like representation of a gravity wave. Okay? When we talk about that, so people don't have to freak out about particles, whatever, right? So that freaked me out because, wow, we've got other clips of Gary, too. And I haven't known about Gary for that long. So the other one that was this Jason clip. So before I play this tonight, right after this, we're going to dig into some of the history about the Air Force's research and Lockheed Martin's research, because no question at all, have they figured this stuff out. You have to be extremely naive to think that Lockheed Martin and the Air Force have not figured out gravity. Now, they figured gravity out with nukes. 100%. Solved it. And they've been suppressing it for however long that's been, since the 60s, 50s, longer. Who knows? So it's really just, to me, a question of let's find the scumbags who have been covering it up. Let's figure out how they've been covering it up. And the reason why I like this is because I love the true crime aspect of all of this. There are definitely a lot of people that know about this stuff. This is like the Murdaugh situation where people couldn't believe that this guy who's this prominent figure in the community was just corrupt as hell, stealing money from people, covering up murders, and just doing it all in the open. Like, you have to understand, how is something like that possible? It's the same idea of like, how is it possible that these companies could have figured out magic and then just kept it hidden from the world? How did they actually pull that off? That's what I want to uncover. And the first clue here is what Gary Stevenson said about Ron Pandolfi. Gary Stevenson also said that Paul Murad was the one that came up with the idea of why spy on all these engineers. We don't need to like spy on them, spend all this money surveilling them, infiltrating them. We can just invite them over for dinner. Just invite them over for dinner. Ask them what they're doing. They'll just tell you. They're all socially awkward as shit. They'll just tell you. And I just went, holy shit, that's the answer. That guy's a genius. That's what they've been doing. That's literally what they've been doing. It's easier than you could possibly imagine. Literally just invite them over. Say, hey, we're going on what do they call them? We're having a conference or whatever they just make up, the Jason group. And so when Ron Pandolfi is calling for a tribunal of the Jason group against Bob Baker, there's no way it's because it doesn't work. You would never call a tribunal against somebody over science you don't think works that you think he's giving to China. So, like, this is the part where, like, does that make any sense? Like, if you thought it didn't work, why would you be afraid he's giving it to China? You would want him to give it to China if it doesn't work, right? Like, that would be the whole point. So just their intentions alone are, we can tell what their real intentions are immediately. Chris Johnson says, please try and get contact with James at Colbert Report. You mean like, I don't know what that means. He has a large audience, and I think he would be very interested in having you discuss implications of MH370 videos and ZPE. Okay, I'm going to put it down. The only Colbert Report I know, Corbett Report? Got it. Okay. I'll hit him up. Because you donated. Thank you. Whoa, Chanel. Wow. Thank you very much. A huge donation. Here's to the haters that don't understand science. Cheers. Yeah, it's actually crazy how it's just normal science, too. Here's the thing about it, guys. For the people out there that, maybe you don't understand all the science, maybe you don't even care to understand all the science. It turns out they're just using normal physics, but they figured out how normal physics works. They figured out the root cause of normal physics. So that's the big rub, is that like if you ask physicists like why, and you keep going down to the bottom, you very quickly get to a point where physicists can't explain things anymore. They can't explain why do I have mass? You told me that I have mass, but why? You say, okay, gravity exists, right? I can drop something, right? Well, I don't want to drop that. That's heavy, but I drop something, it hits the ground, right? But why? Why? Well, space-time has curvature. Okay, why? Why? Right? And quickly, very quickly, they run out of ways to be able to answer the question. That's what they're hiding. That's what they're hiding. They're hiding smart ways to use physics because they've figured out the answer. I'm going to tell you what invariance means. And I'm not ashamed to say that I learned today. I mean, I've Googled it in the past, but like I learned what it really means today. Invariance. Not something that doesn't change. So what we're doing when we're looking at invariance from physics, we're trying to understand the nature of the universe without considering us moving through it. The problem with relativity, as I've told you guys before, is that we're all in our own little bubble. We're all in our own little bubble all the time. And we're interacting with other people's bubbles. And our times, all of our clocks are set pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. But what this also means is that we don't have a frame of reference. We don't really have a standard frame of reference for everybody because everybody's technically in their own little bubble. So how do we make sure, how do we link everybody's clock up perfectly? How do we link everyone's clocks up perfectly? We potentially, oh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on. Having a rough day. So the problem is everybody's in their own little bubble and everybody has their own set of time dilation. So when we use invariance, what we're doing is we're saying, take that out of the equation. Take that bubble out of the equation. I just want to look at the medium. I want to just look at the ether. I want to see the medium, but not from my perspective, from just a hypothetical general perspective. Why? Because if I can figure that out, I can manipulate reality. Let's play the Gary Stevenson thing, and then I'm going to show you guys another clip that's pretty cool.
October 2008, the Jason Defense Science Advisory Panel dismissed claims that high-frequency gravitational waves could pose any kind of national security threat. And this, I view this as a mixed blessing. I learned about this several years after the fact. The Jason panel, which I believe was led by Dr. Ron Pandolfi, did not cite...
It was Pandolfi requested this particular hearing of the Jasons, and so this was one of the things the Jasons touched on. Every summer, the Jasons would be handed a list of, 5 questions or half a dozen questions, and say, hey, this summer, this is what you guys, we want you to look at this. And so they convened every summer when they weren't at school, because they're all profs.
The mixed blessing, bro. I consider it a mixed blessing. I'm sorry I had to cook Tim Ventura over that, but the idea that it's a mixed blessing that they buried high-frequency gravity waves is absurd to me. I like how Gary here says they meet in the summer because they're all profs. Profs meaning professors. The entire Jason group's all professors. I did not expect it, but when I started looking into all the dirt authors, I realized almost half or more of them were university professors. And I thought that was strange because I was like, wait, isn't academia full of shit? Don't they not know about this? And I realized, oh, some of them do. The ones that are connected to the defense contractors, the government, those professors, they probably got their professorship because they're connected. And I went, oh, this is how it works. So there's certain academics at the top that do know about this stuff, and the rest of them are basically just morons who don't realize that they're being kept in the dark. Wow.
And so one of the things on the list that Ron Pandolfi was highlighting was, hey, Bob Baker's off talking to the Chinese about high frequency gravity. We should be concerned about this. And we looked at it as,
should we be concerned that he's talking to the Chinese about high frequency gravity waves? That's not the kind of thing you say unless you're know that the technology is real and you're afraid that he's giving too much away. Right?
a scientific endeavor, not, a defense weapon development program, but they wanted to make sure, there weren't any ill effects of this work. And so is it a security threat or not? And so he got them on the list. He got HFGW on the list, specifically Bob Baker, his work. And so Bob asked, did I want to go along to the Jasons and be at the hearing? And I said, heck yeah, a free ride to San Diego. So Bonnie drove us down in the WEAV. Right.
I love Gary, man. Gary's awesome. I don't even care if he's gatekeeping.
We lived in LA both at the time. So we carpooled down to San Diego, it was at San Diego. All these effects are too weak to be useful. I pointed out, even weak effects can be useful for communication if it's not below the noise of the universe. And so they got hung up, I think, on the Gershenstein effect because I had invoked on one of my papers, not all of them, but one of them, I invoked the Gershenstein effect as one.
Gershenstein effect, man, oh man, Salvatore Pais. It's so crazy to think about Salvatore Pais. Like, I think about him every single day, because I know beyond any shadow of a doubt, he's 100% legit. And now, not only do I know Sal is legit, he's probably working on nuclear weapons. Salvatore Pais is probably working on nuclear weapons or something even scarier. Probably something even scarier, if we're being honest. And if you go back and watch the interviews, I think about a lot of the interviews, like a lot, because he's said more than enough to piece everything together. And it's extremely obvious that he knows there's a connection to nukes and this technology. And even if that connection is not that the video is like an actual fusion bomb, at the bare minimum, they figured out the base layer of reality, the structure of space-time itself, like on the quantum scale that allowed, they figured that out during when they were building nukes and H-bombs. And that's what allowed them to figure out teleportation. No question. I'm trying to think of what else Sal has said that like really has been scary. I mean, the next scariest thing, right? So he was right about all the plasma. He was right about the cold non-equilibrium plasmas, the attosecond lasers, how to produce these effects. The next thing that's scary about what Sal said is advanced general intelligence. He's like really talks about the AGI a lot. And so the next question there is, has the military already produced an AGI, or has Lockheed Martin already produced an AGI or something like that? Anyway, let's finish this clip up.
Possible technique for not only emitting gravitons, but for collecting gravitons. Basically, you say you push a graviton through a very strong magnetic field in the presence of an electric field, and out pops photons. So I don't think that's too big a stretch. And Gershenstein had used gravitational field equations to do that, to show that. But when you work out the math, it's a very, very, very weak effect. Very weak effect. If it's done with the classical field equations. In comparison,
wait, I need him to repeat something here.
Field and out pops. I think on the Gershenstein effect, because I had invoked on one of my papers, not all of them, but one of them, I invoked the Gershenstein effect as one possible technique for not only emitting gravitons, but for collecting gravitons. Basically, you say you push a graviton through a very strong magnetic field in the presence of an electric field, and out pops photons.
Yeah. So it can work both ways. So the Gershenstein effect can cause light to come from gravity, is what he's saying there. So anyway, Jason Group decided to bury high-frequency gravity waves. It's been 20 years now. Still no public acknowledgement of high-frequency gravity waves. Hell, I spoke to Avi Loeb, famous Harvard astrophysicist, and he acted like he didn't know what a high-frequency gravity wave was. He acted like LIGO was detecting them, which is not. I mean, where's the information? If Harvard astrophysicists, PhD Harvard astrophysicists don't know about it, I'd say it's pretty well suppressed. Pretty well suppressed. Here's another video. We're just going to go right into the next one. Before we start digging into the research of the history here in a minute, here's a video I think everybody needs to understand about plasma. I think you're going to understand pretty much immediately why I'm sharing this video. This is for my intuitive people out there that you don't really need to care about how the science works, but you want to know, okay, well, what does it do? Well, here you go. This is what it does.
School, you may have performed an experiment where you looked at iron filings around a permanent magnet, which may have looked something like this. The filings line up along so-called magnetic field lines. These are the lines you would trace out if you took a magnetic compass and followed the arrow from the North Pole to the south. In other words, the magnetic field points along the field line. You may also remember a version of the right-hand rule. Keeping the fingers at right angles to each other, line up the index finger with the direction of the magnetic field, the thumb with the direction of motion of an ion, and the middle finger will show the direction of magnetic force. For a negatively charged electron, do the same thing with your left hand. These simple memory aids illustrate that the magnetic force is always perpendicular to the direction of motion. This means...
Okay, chat, before I show the next part, isn't that just so easy? Right hand rule, right? Just get used to doing the right hand rule. All perpendicular to one another, right? And if you're considering the opposite, like the flow of the electron, then you can just do it backwards, the left-hand rule, right? This is a very simple way to understand the concept of what's the flow of energy or electricity, if you want to think of it. Here we go. Watch this.
Means that a charged particle moving at a right angle to the magnetic field will orbit around it in a circle. If the particle is moving parallel to, or in other words, along the magnetic field line, it feels no force whatsoever and is free to move however it likes. In general, a particle will have a combination of these two motions, which adds up to a spiral around a given magnetic field line.
Whoa. Whoa. Hey, I think I've seen that before. And that also looks a little bit like, yeah, is that a sine wave as well? Quite interesting. Hold on. Let me just check. Have I seen that before? Hold on. I'm just thinking, chat. Thinking real hard. Oh, yeah. Wait. Oh, look, StreamYard fixed their shit. Good job, StreamYard. I've been raging about it. Oh, look. Look, so is that some orbs spinning around a plane in a perfect sphere, in a perfect circle? Oh, yes, it is, actually. Wait, let's get closer. Let's get closer. Oh, look. They're doing the exact thing that video just showed. They're doing the same thing that video just showed. As long as the orbs are spinning around the axis of the magnetic field lines at the right location, they're basically just freely floating. Freely spinning. Freely spinning. Again, anybody that understands magnetism, this is why I'm so skeptical of any PhD that looks at this video, any physicist that looks at this video and dismisses it out of hand. There is no way in hell. If you have a PhD in physics and you look at this and you don't immediately get intrigued by the movement of these orbs, then you don't know anything about electricity. You don't know anything about energy. Anybody that understands magnetism and electricity should look at this and go, holy shit. Holy shit. And if there was just this one video, if it was just that, I'd be like, you're right. You can just ignore it, right? Like, it's crazy, but like, what the hell even is that, right? We don't even know what's going on with that. But it's not, is it? It's not. It turns out we have another massive, massive clue. And I can't even believe that, like, I figured this out. Like, I actually blow myself away. And I guess that's why Sal and other people were kind of surprised. Because, like, I looked at this video way back 2 years ago, looked at this video. And I could tell immediately that those orbs are a plasma field. It's a plasma field. I didn't even know what the hell plasma was. But I knew that was a plasma field, a magnetic field around an object, just from looking at this. And it is. That's exactly what it is. That is a magnetically confined plasma. No question, no doubt. That is 100% what's in there. The only question is what exactly is going on. Is it a fusion reactor? Yeah, it's definitely, in my opinion, it's definitely a fusion reactor inside there. That's why we see the lines in front and behind. So, you know, you see that and you go, okay, well, now we have more than enough evidence that we're looking at electromagnetism at play. Clever use of electromagnetism at play. One more minute of this.
So far, things look pretty peachy for controlled fusion. Just keep hot deuterium and tritium nuclei orbiting a field line until they collide many times and eventually fuse. As an added bonus, the fusion energy is split. 80% is carried by a neutron, which is free to escape the magnetic field and be...
Remember, though, aneutronic fusion. What did they figure out? They figured out fusion without many neutrons. And if 80% of the energy was neutrons, then what's the question, chat? Where's the 80% of the energy going? If 80% of the energy was neutrons and we're doing aneutronic fusion, where's the rest of that energy going? This is basically the difference between a nuke, boom, and an implosion. Bloop. Get rid of all the explosive stuff, and what are you left with? Do we even really know? Do we even really know? Notice how we just went from spiral formations to this is how fusion works. So, yes, no question, what we're seeing in the videos, the reason why the suppression is because fusion, because they've solved fusion. The reason why we're seeing those orbs spin around in a triangle formation is because they've solved fusion. The reason why we're seeing the dark lines before and behind the orbs because they're running on train tracks because they're running along the magnetic field lines that are being created by them spinning around the plane. And they're joint magnetic fields. I mean, as they lock in as well. They are controlling the electrons in the plasma and slowing the electrons down and getting them coherent. This is why I call it a Bose-Einstein condensate, because that's the idea of a Bose-Einstein condensate. What they've done is they have perfected fusion. And it almost certainly is using AI. The more I've researched it, we'll talk about this next week. The more I've researched it, they're using AI to minimize the instabilities along with engineering. And then they're also using oscillation or vortical flow, as Ocean says in the chat. And actually, that reminded me, I think there's something else in here about, let me just take a quick look at this. Do I have this here? Oh, yeah, that was actually a great shout out here. So this is a great point to bring up. When I was looking up invariance, what they try to do is they're trying to make it so that the electric and magnetic fields are no longer perpendicular. And what they say is that you try to make the equations non-zero. They said Nechampkin's force-free... Let me just move this over. It's hard to read. Okay. Nechampkin's force-free condition might involve tuning the plasma currents to achieve specific electric and magnetic magnitude relationship, potentially stabilizing the equation, I think that's I squared, in a way that supports plasmoid's integrity. Wow. So yes, what they were doing was they were trying to figure out how to use the plasma waves, the waves within the plasma, to stabilize the plasma itself. And that's what they accomplished, clearly. Very successfully, I would say. Okay, I think there's like one more minute of this. Hold on.
Captured, while 20% goes to a helium-4 nucleus, which will remain confined and give up its energy to heat the fuel even more. There are a few potential problems which must be carefully avoided, however. One thing that magnetic field lines do not tell you at a glance is how strong the field is at any point, and therefore how much force the particle will feel. Suppose that the magnetic field is pointing out of the screen, but is stronger on the left side than the right. A particle will make a tight semicircle while it's on the left because of the large amount of force it feels there, but a very wide semicircle while it's moving on the right. Overall then, after the particle completes an orbit, it has shifted its position. Ions move downwards, electrons move up. This type of effect is called a drift, and it occurs either due to variations in magnetic field strength or other forces such as gravity. If plasma particles drift to the walls of a reactor, this would be very bad for confinement.
Okay. So if you just watch that and you still are like, no, it can't be plasma orbs. No, it's a fucking plasma orb, man. That's literally just describing what happens. The strong magnetic fields cause it to bend back. What does that make? Oh, a sphere. It makes a sphere. It's not that deep. That's the reason why we're seeing spheres of plasma, because when you look in outer space, we don't see any donut stars. There's no stars shaped like donuts. They're all shaped like spheres. All of them. Every single one. There's not one donut star out there. So there's one more piece here that's really good.
Every charged particle moving in a circle is itself a small magnetic dipole, just like a very tiny bar magnet.
Boom! Every electron moving by itself is a tiny dipole, just like a bar magnet. everything is magnetism all the way down, just like Dr. Yu said.
With its own field. The field of a single electron on its own is insignificant. However, the additional magnetic field coming from a plasma is important when the density of electrons and ions becomes quite large, which is advantageous for fusion. The plasma feels the influence of a magnetic field and in turn affects it back. This collective action is called magnetohydrodynamics.
Wait, magnetohydrodynamics is literally exists because of plasma research, fluid motion in plasma research. So plasma just begins to act like a fluid, and then that's why magnetohydrodynamics exists, because we just control it with magnetic fields. And then once the magnetic fields got powerful enough, now we started creating our own little stars. I mean, that's what happened, right? That's what the story is. So we'll watch the rest of that next week when we go through the fusion stuff, probably, because that is a really good explainer. But we've got bigger fish to fry for tonight. So next thing, holy smokes, chat, wingless electromagnetic vehicle. Okay, everybody asked me, where are the sources? Where's the sauce? I mean, guys, have I ever not brought in the receipts before? I feel like I've always brought in the receipts every single time. So let's just do it again, right? If the Air Force really built this stuff, where is it? Well, how about wingless electromagnetic air vehicle? The wingless electromagnetic air vehicle, the WEAV, is heavier than air flight system developed by the University of Florida, funded by the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. The WEAV was invented in 2006 by Dr. Subrata Roy, plasma physicist, aerospace engineering professor at University of Florida, subject of several patents, at least 6 links here. The WEAV employs no moving parts, combines the aircraft structure, propulsion, energy production, and storage, and control subsystems into one integrated system. Actually, we need to play this. Seems like what we're looking for. I don't know about you guys, but so far so good. The WEAV uses a multitude of small electrodes covering the whole wetted aircraft area of the aircraft in a multi-barrier plasma actuator arrangement, an enhancement over dual electrode dielectric barrier discharge (DBD) systems. This was actually one of the systems that we've looked into, the DBD discharge. So they're saying this is better than that. Using multiple layers of dielectric materials and powered electrodes. These electrodes are very close to one another, so surrounding air can be ionized using radio frequency alternating current high voltage. Sounds about right. Wait, what was that thing that I just read? Champkin's force-free condition might involve tuning the plasma currents to achieve specific E and B field magnitude relationship, potentially stabilizing I squared in a way that supports the plasma's integrity. Interesting. Pumping surrounding. Oh, okay. Then it says, here we go. That uses the high frequency voltage of a few tens of kilovolts. So a few tens of thousands of kilovolts, though I guarantee you it goes way higher than that. Even at standard pressure of 1 atmosphere, the resultant plasma contains ions that are accelerated by Coulomb force using electrohydrodynamics. I think they mean, okay, sure. At low altitude and small velocity, the surface vehicle then acts as an electrostatic fluid accelerator, pumping surrounding air as ion wind, radially then downward. So the lower pressure zone on the upper surface of the upper pressure zone underneath the aircraft produces lift and thrust for propulsion and stability. At higher altitude and to reach greater speeds, a magnetic field is also applied to enhance collisions between electrons and heavy species in the plasma, and use the more powerful Lorentz body force to accelerate all charge carriers in the same direction along a radial high-speed jet. I mean, do I have to do the meme? I mean, this is it, right? Okay, there's actually so many different orbs flying around that I don't even know whose orbs are in the MH370 videos. We've got Lockheed Martin's got some orbs. They've got their compact fusion reactor as well. The Air Force apparently has their own magical flying orbs that they started developing in 2006. And this time frame, by the way, is basically perfect. This time frame is right after the dense plasma focus paper by George Miley, Frank Mead, David Froning. So they had figured it out, and they're like, okay, time to make some plasma orbs, 2006. And then once you've got the plasma orbs, then it's time to do some teleportation. So if this is true, and this is really their first vehicle, which is probably not, but let's just say it is, then I would say the timeline is lining up perfectly to be teleporting a Boeing 777 around 2014. Probably they were working on teleportation 2010, just a few years after this, because they already knew teleportation was possible. They just needed the systems to be able to pull it off. And if you don't believe me, wait till the next part, the next thing that we research after this, okay? Okay, so I don't think we're going to go through the rest of this, but you can take a look. Again, this is just the Wikipedia page, man. The crazy part, this is just the Wikipedia page. I didn't even do a deep dive into this yet to figure out, okay, what's really going on with this thing. There's no way this thing, like, if you look around a little bit, it's like, whatever happened to this? It never went further because it was too expensive. Yeah, right. Yeah, right, dude. Did we just read what we just read? There's no way that you build something this elaborate, and then it just it just didn't work out. Are you kidding me? Do you see how insanely elaborate this is? Because what I'm saying is, in order to build the orbs, this orb thing must be like a Swiss Army knife. Like, they had to solve a lot of problems with this orb. And I'm not saying they didn't. They did solve them. We found all the papers where they solved them. But this is exactly the kind of thing that we need to explain how they built the orbs. It's not just put some thing into a circle, make a donut, and now it's going to turn into an orb. No, you need like some plasma actuators. You need shit like this. Or maybe you need a compact fusion reactor or both. Who knows? Yeah, like, too expensive. Like, the excuses just are ridiculous, man. Actually just ridiculous, the excuses are. And then, of course, everybody's looking at it because they're thinking it's a flying saucer. Because here's the big thing that we need to stop. We need to change people's perceptions. We're not going to fly out there. We're not going to see flying saucers flying around. Those are almost certainly human technology. Because aliens or whatever, they're going to be in plasma bubbles. Everything's going to be in a plasma bubble. At least, I mean, maybe not. Who knows? They can probably get crazy with their shit. But point being, you're not going to send a person here anyway. Like, when we were thinking of aliens coming here and flying saucers, we were thinking, like, that was 50s thinking. We were thinking that we were going to be flying around in balloons and shit like that. No, it's drones, man. It's drones everywhere. Everything's drones. Aliens aren't going to come hang out on Earth. They're too busy live streaming on Zeta Reticuli. Earth is boring. We're primitive. So, wingless electromagnetic air vehicle. And I will address the alien situation right here, because a lot of people say, well, this goes really far back. Like, the stories of the stuff. Okay, I don't care. I don't know, man. Probably is aliens. There's a really weird amount of secrecy around this. Like, you would think from this perspective of, if this was just straight up human technology, I don't think it would be playing out the way that it is. I don't think there would be all this lore about aliens and reverse engineering. All that lore, it could be a psyop, but it feels like there's a grain of truth to it. And I'm afraid that grain of truth is that we're all basically just prisoners on this planet. And that's the reason why they're hiding this technology, is that we're about to enter a world that we're not ready for. We're about to open the door and realize, holy shit, we are not compatible with this universe. Our civilization is basically just ants, insignificant ants, living a stupid culture that nobody in the universe respects. Like, we're going to find some shit out like that. That will be something that breaks people's minds, right? That, all of our way of life and everything that we valued is not valued in the universe. at all. Like maybe the opposite. Anyway, just throwing that out there. Okay, so this next thing, well, what's next here? Yeah, okay. Whoever shared this with me, great share on this article here. Check this out, guys. I'll put a link in the chat for you right now. The war zone's pretty legit, you know, like if that what's his name, John Greenwalder, just messing. If John Greenwald was as good a journalist as the people at the war zone, like he'd actually be respected, as opposed to just like being handed FOIAs by the U.S. government. Like these people actually did some research. The problem is that they didn't know what they were looking for. So these people did all the research, they just didn't even know what they were looking for here. So this person did a deep dive into the history of quote unquote anti-gravity research. And of course, it goes straight back to Lockheed Martin. It goes straight back to Lockheed Martin, which of course was called the Martin Corporation or company back then. And if you want to know who Martin was, he was one of the first pioneers of flight, of manned flight, like way back, like going back to the Wright brothers. Okay. Dr. Lewis Witten. In terms of the Air Force's early anti-gravity research, one intriguing firsthand account comes from Dr. Lewis Witten, who was a professor of physics at the University of Cincinnati until 1991. Throughout his career, he conducted research into gravitation, quantum gravity, and general relativity. Holy crap. During a roundtable discussion at the 27th Texas Symposium, he recounted his own work on the discovery of anti-gravity. He recalls being recruited by George S. Trimble, who is serving as the vice president for the Martin Corporation, the Glenn Martin Company, which then evolved into Martin Marietta and then merged into Lockheed Martin in 1995. Witten was recruited. He would be known as the Research Institute for Advanced Studies, RIAS. Everybody was calling themselves the Institute for Advanced Studies, including Hal Puthoff. Okay, so watch this. Okay, where does it begin? 149. This is it.
I will try to stick to 2 or 3 minutes. I'm also, however, going to tell you very little about my personal life and the discovery of anti-gravity. And I bring that in because that impacted on my life quite considerably.
Holy shit. How have people not figured this out, man?
In the middle 1950s, I found myself after a different, I should say, youth than one might expect, employed by the Martin Company, now the Lockheed Martin Company, which was mentioned by the dean earlier. I had a PhD in physics, which I got shortly after World War II at Hopkins. At that time, Hopkins was still building the best diffraction gratings in the world. And they were measuring more atomic energy levels than anybody else in the world. And there was only one theoretical physicist on the faculty, and he was doing statistical mechanics, which was the subject of my thesis. In the mid-1950s then, I found myself employed at the Martin Company with a rather weak PhD, I would say, at the age of about 35, with a few children that I was interested in. And the vice president had the idea, which was to him a wonderful idea, to develop anti-gravity. Of course, when he tried the idea in public, you can imagine the greeting he received by the scientists. So he said to himself, those poor bastards, I'll show them. He was vice president of a big company with a lot of money behind them, and they made a lot of money in those days. And the overhead rate was perhaps 150 to 200%.
I just want to point out, chat, I love this stuff. Like, this is exactly what we need to understand, because we're hearing it from the man himself. His story, of how he was recruited to research, quote unquote, anti-gravity, which he thought was nonsense at the time, which everybody in the 50s thought was definitely insane, right? They just thought it was just cuckoo shit. Hell, people still think it's cuckoo shit today.
And for a contract, which was cost plus, they were allowed to use 10% of the cost of the contract to do research. So he had the bright idea he was going to start a fundamental research laboratory in which anti-gravity would be discovered. I was a new employee.
What? Wait. Their stated goal of the Martin Corporation was to set up a laboratory to discover anti-gravity? Like, they literally just said that's what they're going to do? Why is anyone even speculating that Lockheed Martin is not flying? I mean, it's clear it's Lockheed Martin's shit flying around the sky. I mean, the only question at this point is how many other companies are also doing it, because this was like 70 years ago. That was 70 fucking years ago. Chad, here's the thing about it. I'm starting to understand what happened here. The intelligence community, the engineers, were all in the military. They were all connected to the military. They formed these, what are now the defense contractors, because they had inside connections and they had inside information. They had insider information. And they used those connections. They abused those connections and made themselves very wealthy. And then they formed more and more companies and more connections, things like Palantir, for example. Palantir gets formed. That was all good old boy shit behind the scenes, right? They all knew it was going to be successful because everything was already in place ahead of time, right? That's the kind of corrupt shit that's been going on. And in incentive structures like that, there's no reason not to do it. No wonder everybody's doing it. You're either doing it or you're failing. You're either out there scamming everybody else, taking their money, not giving them the best technology, controlling the markets, or you are being taken advantage of. That's the real way of the world. And that's why we have companies like Sierra Nevada Corporation, which nobody even knew what the hell they were before I brought them up. Everyone thought that was a beer company. Now we know they make hyper advanced surveillance systems for the Department of Defense, the Air Force, and who knows what else they're doing at this point, frankly. Okay, back to Witten.
But a PhD in physics.
Wait,
I was assigned to the new laboratory to discover.
Whoa. Hello. What did I just see here? Whoa, Winona Riders. Hello. Thank you, Winona Riders. Wow. You got to get with Donald Scott. Isn't he Electric Universe, right? Isn't Dr. Donald Scott Electric Universe? Real Sleeper. Was an advisor for the Sapphire Project. Oh, yeah. If not, maybe Jermangle old man builds. You know your shit. One day, the day you stop learning is the day you start dying. Keep pushing it. If not, maybe an appearance on the Palace. Yeah, I'm not too worried about interviews and stuff like that. As you've seen, guys, I haven't really been doing a lot of interviews. I just haven't been responding to people who've been asking. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Just been busy, been tired. And I want to advance myself more than anything else. I want to learn more about this. The truth about the Joe Rogan cancellation is that I'm glad that happened. I'm not even mad about it. The reason why I push about it is because I'm going to keep jabbing at everybody that tried to block me forever. It's never going to stop. So if you think I'm going to stop doing that, never. But I'm glad it didn't happen. It was a blessing in disguise. I could have got clowned on easily if I did the Joe Rogan interview that early before I understood the science. I need to be doing shows like Joe Rogan, which are going to have like 50 million impressions, when I know exactly how the science works, when I can explain it to a degree where there's no ambiguity, where no one can counter anything. And now I think I'm at close to that point, close enough at least. So I'm glad it didn't happen back then. And if it doesn't happen, I don't care. I don't care at all, man. The objective is to get the United States government to emit what happened to MH370. A lot of people say there's no way you're ever going to be able to do that. Look what they're doing to Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, well, we didn't have 2 videos of Jeffrey Epstein hanging himself. If we did, it would be a different story. Be a different story entirely now, wouldn't it? So we'll see. People say, how are you going to do that? Well, if I said that, I'd be giving it all away. But you know what? Here you go. I don't have a full plan. My plan basically involves pushing the topic bigger and bigger and bigger, making myself into a public figure, even though I don't want to the degree where it can no longer be ignored, or even if it is ignored, that when the science comes out, I'm the one who already revealed it before the academics even figured it out, because that will make it undeniable. That's exactly my plan, and the only way it could work is if I'm right. And that's the point. And what I would ask anybody who's a skeptic out there is this. If you knew that there was some magical technology that nobody believed in, like the public, didn't believe in, what would you do to convince them? I think a lot of you would say, oh, I would build it. No, you wouldn't. You would have no idea how to build it. You have no idea how to build it. What are you going to learn? You're going to spend 20, 25 years of your life learning how to build something so that you can prove that you were right. It's never going to happen. You're never going to change anybody's mind that way. That's the crazy part, because that would be a logical approach to it. And it doesn't work. And it doesn't work. And that's why so many engineers failed. It's not that they were wrong. It's just you can't win an information war when they control the flow of information. You have to control the flow of information. So we'll see. Flash Dagger. Hello, sir. I recently found you on X and I'm trying to learn more about the disappearance of the plane. You have a lot of content. Which of your videos is best to explain in terms of the newbie? What was one of the more recent ones I just did, guys? Tim Pool was probably the easiest. Well, maybe not for newbies. I don't know, guys. Somebody else put some recommendations in the chat for Flash Dagger on which interviews were the best. I mean, even Redacted is good, but the problem is we had some major revelations after the Gorgon Stare interview. The Nerdtronic, I think, was pretty good. There's been a few pretty good interviews recently. You can check out the Gaia interview, but I think that was filmed like right before the Gorgon Stare revelation, like a week before. Could be wrong. Thank you very much for that donation, by the way, Flash Dagger. Appreciate you. And then Jonathan Hunt, thank you for being here, brother. Thank you for being here. Okay. Yeah, Candace Owens is also really good. She actually just talked to Nick Fuentes. Oh, Matt Bell. Yeah, Matt Bell's good. Just looking at the people in the chat, what they're saying. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones. Hey, it's Baker's Tut. Have a good weekend, Baker's Tut. Okay. Let's get back to this piece here. I want to listen to the end of this.
Anti-gravity, and I was told that's my assignment.
You got literally assigned to anti-gravity. Literally assigned to anti-gravity.
Well, I said I'll start by studying general relativity. and I did. I started by studying general relativity all by myself. No teachers, no colleagues. Just Peter Bergman's book, which was, in retrospect, it was a very good book to study for me at the time because I do no differential geometry. It was not the book one would pick today, I think, but it was a good book then. And I was helped by the fact that at that time, Jim Anderson started the seminar program at Stevens. And that's where I learned relativity between the book and Stevens. For example, when I was at Stevens, if I had heard Charles say that black holes were a good sink for entropy, I would go home and find out what he's talking about. And so I would learn about entropy and black holes, and that black holes were a good sink for entropy. And if I learned that Roger said that energy was not localized, I would go home and find out why energy wasn't localized and so forth. And so I learned relativity.
Okay, so one other thing I love about this right here, guys, he's basically saying he was self-taught. Self-taught. That's what Witten is saying right here. He's like, I didn't know anything about this shit. He's like, I guess I better learn how general relativity works. So I like this because it shows that somebody is coming in with an open mind. He's coming in with an open mind, no preconceptions. And he's just going, I'm just going to do hard science and see what happens. So whatever Witten's conclusions were here, why would I not believe what he's saying right here? He comes in, he's a skeptic of it. He just says, I'm just going to learn it. I'm going to learn it on the fly. It actually reminds me a lot of what I'm doing. I'm just learning it myself. I don't want to know about what people say is the answer. I just want to figure it out for myself, right? I love this. I love this approach.
Eventually, I think I got there. However, on the way, there were some strange incidents. I had to give a couple of lectures.
We got to do a quick pause here. So people are saying they don't like Candace Owens, blah, blah, blah. I'm under the impression she's a dirtbag. Guys, one of the things that we have to correct is this idea of people's perceptions, right? We have to get back to a point in where we can disagree with one another, but we don't like cancel people because, oh, their person's a dirtbag. If you do that, no one's going to listen to me because everybody's going, oh, he's mean to people. He calls people rude names. He's not civil. Whatever. They make up a million different bullshit reasons to do that. I would talk to literally anyone. Sit down face to face, talk to anyone. I don't care who they are. I don't care what their views are. That's the point. I believe that the strongest ideas will win in an open debate, in an open conversation. The best ideas rise to the surface. The people that want to stop conversations, those are the ones that are afraid of what the person is going to say. Anybody like we should not be afraid of somebody. They're full of shit. There's nothing to be feared. Why are you a fear of information that's not true? No, what people fear is true information. If somebody says you are cheating on your wife and you're not, you don't care. You just say, no, I'm not. Prove it. If you are cheating on your wife and they say you're cheating on your wife, you get really angry. You get really angry. Why are you saying that? Shut the hell up. Stop talking about that. Don't tell her. That's human nature. That's how humans react. And I'm going to tell you guys something right now. People lie a lot. They lie a lot, and they lie with good intentions a lot as well. They lie with good intentions, and they believe that you are not worthy of the truth. Do you think the New Jersey plasmoid sightings were them working on this type of technology? If you go back, I think my takes on the New Jersey drones is going to age like fine wine. I said that there's really two options. Either it's another country testing us the same way we test them by parking their drones, their plasma drones over the top of us, or it's our own people and they're putting our own drones, like our own defense contractors are probing our own defenses, or they are some kind of defense network. Like we had them up and some people were seeing this defense network we have set up. Maybe it's part of the Golden Dome. Who knows? But those are my opinions on the New Jersey drones. I don't think it was aliens. No. Not at all. So, okay, let's go back to this. We're getting sidetracked.
The Astronautical Society, the American Astronautical Society, was just founded because astronauts were beginning to go up in space, and they asked me to give a talk on anti-gravity. So I gave a talk, which was to an audience assembled about the size of this room, but there was no standing room left after the audience came in. And I told a little bit about space contraction and time dilation, and that had to do with the metric. And I was interested in curved space and so on and so forth.
He's saying all the right words here, right? Can you imagine in 1950, in the 50s or even 60s, frankly, hell, even 70s, to be talking about time dilation? Talking about time dilation in the 50s or 60s? I didn't even know time dilation was a thing until 2014. I was born in 1982. I didn't know time dilation was a thing until 2014. 2014. I had no idea what it was. This guy is talking about time dilation in the 50s. Yeah. Pretty sure he knows what he's talking about. He definitely figured out relativity.
And then during the question period, they said, what are you doing about anti-gravity? And I said, well, I'm not against gravity. And I told him that there was no serious scientist in the world studying something that he would call anti-gravity. During the time after my talk, several people came to me and said, you had a big audience today. If you come next year, you won't have 25 people. And I said to myself, good, that was my aim. The same thing happened in Seattle. I won't go through those things. The same thing happened in Seattle. But you would be amazed at the number of people who know science, who know the mistakes that Newton made and the mistakes that Einstein made, and they have it right. I would get a person like that at least once a week for many weeks.
Now, this is interesting. This is interesting because he's basically shooting down the idea of anti-gravity here. He's basically shooting down. What he's saying is that he has people come to him all the time saying they've got it figured out. They've got it figured out. Does that sound familiar? That sounds familiar to me. That sounds familiar to me. You go look, check my replies. There's plenty of people that all say they got it figured out. The reality is it's not that simple. The reality is Einstein is correct. Einstein is correct. Einstein's equations are correct. That one Jason guy, for example, who's always trolling, going, I've got it all figured out. I wrote 900-page, 52-volume thing that's rewritten all of physics. Like, you're going down the wrong path, brother. Just me trying to be nice and respectful to you, that's not the way. The way is you take Einstein's equations and you unify them with electricity. That's what you do. That's what takes us to the next level. Whether or not Einstein was perfectly correct or not, who cares? End of the day, that's what we got to do to get there. And that's what these guys already did.
That happened. Some of them were very simple ideas. The simple ideas are always hard to combat. I'll give you an example in a moment. I said it's nonsense. But the power of a vice president of a big company is so great that the reason, I will answer Josh's question, the reason there was a laboratory at Wright Field was to find out what we were doing and to help us do it. And I got a contract from Wright Field to do it.
What? Wright Field? That's Patterson. That's Patterson, right? Wright Field is Patterson Air Force Base? Isn't that Area 51? One sec. Googling. Googling. Area 51 are distinct locations, though they are connected by conspiracy theories and... oh, no, they're not. No, completely wrong. Whoops. That's Ohio. Whoops. Never mind. Awkward. No, but Wright-Patterson is where they were testing a lot of this in Ohio. That's where Paul Sizz was talking about where they were testing at Wright-Patterson some of these hypersonic designs or designs that he said were going like, what do you say, 10,000 miles per hour or something like 20,000? Yeah. Oh, so the connections, that's where the storage area is? Oh, okay. I didn't know the lore. Okay. So that's the lore of where it is. Yeah, I should have remembered that. I should have, honestly, it's embarrassing that I didn't know that Wright-Patterson's in Ohio. Not going to say why, but yes. Okay. So they built this Wright-Patterson, labs in Wright-Patterson to study gravity research. Okay, this is important.
Do gravity, which I did very happily.
Oh, yeah.
Just as an aside, I'm essentially finished because they'll be last. You're moving at 20% speed. Okay, I'll go faster.
Also, I gotta hate on some of these people. They're so self-congratulatory, right? Like it's a room full of nerds and they're just kind of geeking out. And it just feels like everybody's just kind of patting themselves on the back, right? Like, I don't know, just kind of a weird vibe for me in this when I listen to this. Maybe I'm just a Debbie Downer.
Where was I? Anyway, the laboratory was started because of the propaganda generated by my vice president. And I want everybody who talks sort of blows his own horn a little bit. So I will say that in my last report to Wright-Patterson, which you probably don't have anymore, I made the study had to do with conformal transformations. I made the remark that if somebody travels with acceleration, he will see particles. You'll see that in the final report, which of course became a very I didn't make the calculation of how many particles he would see, unfortunately, but nevertheless, I knew that he would see particles. Well, thank you very much. I will perhaps privately give you some more examples if you wish, but I'm slowing down.
Okay, so what I want, the big thing to take from that was the Wright-Patterson connection. Why? Because that was a Lockheed Martin engineer. Lockheed Martin engineer that was working at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, working on anti-gravity in their labs. So this connects directly the Martin Corporation to the Air Force. Now, I want to skip ahead to something. Well, I guess maybe it's not skipping ahead. So this same article here, where does it say it? 1970. We're going to come back to this here up here in a second, but 1972. Here it is. The anti-gravity research conducted at Wright-Patterson concluded in the early 70s with the passage of the Mansfield Amendments. Booyah! Jackpot! Who has gone on over 100 podcasts and said that the military had to stop researching gravity because of the Mansfield Amendment in 1971, 1972. This guy did. Oh, Yahtzee indeed, chat. Yahtzee indeed. So what happened? The Air Force was researching anti-gravity at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the 60s, all throughout the 60s. And then the 70s hit, and now they're not allowed to do it anymore. The Mansfield Amendment gets passed, and they're not allowed to research gravity because it doesn't technically have combat implications, even though it certainly does. So what did they do, chat? You guys guess. What do you think the Air Force did when they were no longer allowed to research gravity? Oh, they privatized it. They gave it to Lockheed Martin, the literal people they were already working with. They gave it to the people they were already working with. Witten was working with them and Lockheed Martin, so all they did was go, okay, no big deal. We'll just pay Lockheed Martin to do the exact same work they were already doing before. Come on, man. It's easy. It's easy to figure out. Okay, and let's see what else it says down here. The Mansfield Amendment somewhat slowed the U.S. Military's research in these types of lofty developments. Probably not, though. Probably not. And I suppose the question there is, did this actually cause a breakaway civilization to be formed? Like of defense contractors? Possibly. Let's switch gears for 1 second, go back to Lewis Witten. This is a paper written by Lewis Witten. It was just referenced in that article I was just reading. I pulled it up and I gave it a read. Geometry of Gravitation and Electromagnetism. Lewis Witten, 1959. Look at that date. 1959. So this would have been probably right after he was doing his research. Well, I mean, a few years later, after he started doing his research for Lockheed, for Martin Corporation, and for the Air Force. An independent derivation is given of equations first derived by Rannick, who showed how, under certain circumstances, the combined theory of gravitation and electromagnetism of Einstein and Maxwell can be unified and described exclusively in terms of geometry. Wow, dude. Wow. I mean, that right there is Kaluza-Klein +1. That's SSJ2 Kaluza-Klein, chat. If you don't know what that means, then you don't love anime enough. Simple as that. SSJ2 Kaluza-Klein right here. This is a unification theory right here that does the same thing Kaluza-Klein were doing. Unify electromagnetism and gravity. Unifying Einstein's equations and Maxwell's equations. You know who else did this? Hal Puthoff. Gravity is a 0-point fluctuation force. Space-time metric engineering. Exactly the same concept as this. The only difference here is this is focused on geometry. Geometry. And geometry is really interesting because we are looking at geometry spinning around an airplane. Magnetism in geometry, spinning around an airplane. So what this is saying is they figured out a unification theory where everything boils down to geometry. And that's interesting. That's interesting because when I was researching thermonuclear detonations, before I stopped reading the book and getting sidetracked, it all started to come down to geometry as well. How do you trigger a fusion bomb? You use fission bombs that focus the waves onto a single point. The next step is resonance. Create a resonance effect. You create a resonance effect and you can have possibly cascading detonation. So anyway, I thought this was pretty crazy. I mean, it just says it right there. It is shown that in regions of space-time where two invariant of the electromagnetic field both vanish, the unified theory cannot apply. Either such regions do not exist in nature or their descriptions in terms of pure geometry has yet to be found. This makes me wonder if he's saying that black holes aren't real. Is he saying black holes aren't real here? Regions of space-time where two invariants of the electromagnetic field both vanish, the unified theory cannot apply. I don't know if he's saying that wormholes are real or that black holes can't exist. I'm not really sure, but he's saying something here that seems important. If anyone can figure that out, post that in the comments or post it on my Twitter replies later. Interesting. Okay, back to the spice. What else we got? Oh, so turns out, weirdly, I didn't really know this, but Lewis Witten has a son. His son is named Ed Witten. Turns out he's an extremely famous mathematician and physicist. Turns out he's the developer of string theory. Wow. Eric Weinstein has been railing against string theory on Joe Rogan and major podcasts, even mentions Ed Witten. So you're telling me I just looked at a scientific paper from 1959 by Ed Witten's dad that unifies gravity and electromagnetism using geometry? And then the guy his son is the one that's given us string theory, which what is string theory solved exactly? Nothing. I will believe in whatever theory gives us fusion the fastest. I don't care what you want to call it. You want to call it magic Pegasus unicorn theory? Call it that if you want. If you get me fusion and free energy, I don't give a shit what we call it. Call it whatever the hell you want. Call it space juice. Call it Ethernet. Call it anything. Oh, that's me not sharing anything. Okay, back to this article. Let's skip down to my boy Frank Mead, because all of a sudden, Frank Mead makes an appearance. In 1972, an ad hoc group with Frank Mead, then senior aerospace engineer with the U.S. Air Force Aerospace Research Labs, serving as editor, had published a technical report titled Advanced Propulsion Concepts Project Outgrowth for the Air Force Rocket Propulsion Laboratory at Edwards Air Force Base. The document discusses various advanced propulsion concepts ranging from traditional rocket propulsion to anti-gravity propulsion, to which an entire chapter is dedicated. I want to show you something here. We're going to come right back to that. This is the bio for Frank Mead from Kepler Aerospace. Kepler Aerospace has a free energy magnetic motor that potentially produces anti-gravitational effects. And they have other pretty advanced concepts on their website. This is definitely some kind of front company that I don't know, just has these scientists connected to it. Dr. Frank Mead, degree credentials include PhD in aerospace engineering, I'm just going to skip ahead from some of that. Has over 35 years experience with advanced propulsion and energy concepts, is a nationally recognized expert in this discipline, and is a skilled in multidisciplinary aspects of advanced physics and engineering technology. He was a research scientist at Edwards Air Force Base, involved experimental and program contract management of R&D level for advanced and exotic development efforts, including flight experiments and demonstrations. These U.S. Air Force programs invested various chemical, electric, laser, solar, and nuclear propulsion thrusters and systems concepts. One example involved the feasibility of using a directed energy laser to launch payloads. Dr. Mead currently searches for innovative and revolutionary propulsion concepts in pursuit of revolutionary concepts that alter the paradigm and explore game-changing technologies. Of these typical advanced concepts, he was involved with fusion propulsion, various plasma concepts, unified field theory, zero-point vacuum energy, magnetic field propulsion, teleportation, and faster than light travel. What the actual hell? Of these typical advanced concepts, he was involved with fusion propulsion, various plasma concepts, unified field theory, zero-point vacuum energy, magnetic field propulsion, teleportation, and faster than light travel. Yeah, he's the guy. I think we've nailed the guy. I never read that bio before just now, by the way. I didn't even read it before I posted it. Holy smokes. People really still think the videos are fake, huh? Okay. Believe whatever you want to believe, my dudes. Believe whatever you want to believe, my dudes. Okay. So we're not going to read through the whole paper, but thankfully this article actually already outlined a bunch of them, which one here says electric and or magnetic fields to accelerate an ionized working fluid, which would be a plasma, or react directly with the environment by electric or magnetic fields. There's a chapter called Electrostatic Effects. Now, let me just read this one out loud to you. I'm going to hide it. You can see the source right there. I want to read this for full dramatic effect. This chapter says the use of electric generators to charge giant metallic spheres buried in the ground 6 miles apart in a symmetrical arrangement. Another sphere would be placed on top of the ground in the center of this arrangement of spheres, which would then be shot up 620 miles into space when the other spheres are charged with intense electrical current, according to the document from 1972. What the fuck, chat? What the fuck? How am I reading this right here? Why is this in a scientific paper from 1972? Says right there, 3 charged spheres with another sphere at the center, separated by 6 miles, has a sphere in the center, symmetrically arranged. Symmetrically arranged means equilateral triangle. Shot them into the sky. How does it work? Right hand rule, chat. Right hand rule. That's how it works. Right hand rule. It's simple. Keep it simple. That's just totally wild. Here you go. Lift force. The repulsion force due to the 4 spheres pushing the 5th sphere will raise the free sphere to a point where the ratio of force to weight is 1. This point occurs at the altitude just under 1,000 kilometers. This is the exact solution for the height requirements of trial and error. To me, I mean, this is practicing teleportation. They're practicing teleportation. This is the early advent of them figuring out teleportation. As they figured out they can use like basically the same as Eric Lathwaite's magnetic river. They can create a magnetic river and they can accelerate an object at the center. Yeah, it's a polyhedron geometric field, right? That's what they're describing here. Remember? Polyhedral solution. We are making a shape in space-time. They make their shape, and they have a fourth orb up here, and then it shoots it up into the sky. Literally, that's what that says. Actually, just wild. I mean, there it is. And who is it? It's Frank Mead. It's Frank fucking Mead again. It's Frank Mead again. I love you too, boo. And another thing they did here was look at this. For my Boogosphere, casual Boogosphere enjoyers, look at this. Cavity inside of a metal sphere causes lift. They just put a cavity inside of a metal sphere and they can get it to float. So who likes metal spheres? If you like metal spheres, there you go, chat. Electrostatic sphere cross-section. The greatest advantage of this concept is the system is initially charged on Earth with tremendous amount of massless energy, which is stored in a low-loss propulsion system. Similar to other low-thrust vehicles, this system is capable of accelerating to very high velocities when operating over great distances for substantial periods of time. The system used can be decelerate vehicles from Earth. So I think this was explaining how, the same document outlines how theoretical approaches using superconductors to achieve electromagnetic spacecraft propulsion. Right there, just says it. In 1972, they knew they needed superconductors. They knew they needed superconductors in 1972. Here you go. Here's the one. Oh, yeah, this is amazing. This is the conclusion of the document. This is Frank Mead in his own words. Are you ready? This is crazy, man. I'm going to go full screen for this too while I read this. Obviously, advancements in certain areas of technology could make a number of concepts suddenly very attractive. Improvements in high energy lasers by several orders of magnitude of energy output, or new concepts involving long distance energy transfer, would make both laser propulsion and infinite ISP ramjet very attractive. Very attractive. The development of higher current density superconductors, metallic hydrogen, or even room temperature superconductors would make many of the magnetic concepts more attractive. Radical departures from time-honored, well-proved approaches are either discarded or lack visualization. Possibly not until man truly becomes a creature of space will the restrictions imposed on his imagination be removed and radically new propulsion concepts devised. We are just beginning to understand the true nature of space and to attempt to utilize this environment for our propulsion needs. Wow, dude. Wow. I mean, what did he know? 1972, he wrote that? That was 53 years ago. He wrote that in 1972. That was 11 years before I was born, he wrote this. He was looking into the future. He was looking into the future when he wrote this. This is actually the thing that bugs me the most reading this. I was sitting here thinking maybe they figured this stuff out in the 90s or something. They already had it understood in the 60s and the 70s. Franklin Mead is saying we just need material science to advance. Once material science advances, we're going to have floaty plasma orbs. That's what he was saying there. How did he know that? How did he know that? The way he writes that makes me feel like he had seen something that he knew that's how it was going to play out. Very weird, man. This is why we're talking about this tonight. In fact, there's actually this literal paragraph is the reason why I changed the topic of the live stream tonight from fusion to this. Because Franklin Mead's the guy. Franklin Mead's the guy, and anything he says, I'm paying close attention. And then it says, okay, they expanded upon these. Document looks at the Byfield-Brown effect. 1989, electric propulsion study. So they kept looking at this stuff, ionic wind. They've been using this concept of ionic wind to cover up that it's actually just manipulating the ether. And then here, the Mach effect. Who was it who was talking about the Mach effect? I think it was Woodward, right? We were talking about magnetic wormholes or just electromagnetic wormholes. The Mach effect. One brief chapter explores the concept of inertial mass variation using a rotating cylinder filled with mercury. If you're a UFO person, that should be pretty interesting. I think that goes back to the Die Glock with the Nazis, potentially. Okay. Let's see. Oh, and then here, look at this. We've actually gone into this one a lot. 2006 study for 2025, 25th aerospace vehicles. I think this was written by Paul Size and maybe others as well. And then this one talks about, and this is George Miley, I think, compact fusion reactors. So here now it talks about compact fusion reactors. It says, one example of propellantless field propulsion proposes the use of a high voltage and high frequency electromagnetic field pulsations to induce mass fluctuations within the electronic and ionic structure of dielectric materials to cause a favorable grav-inertial field coupling with nearby and distant matter that results in a unidirectional force. So, I mean, that's electrogravitic propulsion. That's electrogravitic propulsion. They're saying we can create a force using electromagnetism. Boom. And we can fly around with it. And then I think this was the one. Was this the one? Somewhere in here, it links back to the, what was that thing called? The WEAV. The WEAV. But check a look at this right here. Another shout out to the Breakthrough Propulsion Physics Program. I pinpointed at this thing a long time ago as well. Gary Stevenson brought it up on Wednesday. Sup, Expedition. Nice to see you. They brought it up on Wednesday. The Breakthrough Physics Propulsion Lab. This is where all the smarts got together. And they weren't just normally people. These were guys that were like, they knew what was really going on with the research. Let's see. It talks about Hermann Bondi's negative mass. Okay, I think that's it. Let me just look through. Oh, then Salvatore Pais gets a shout out here as well from his patents. Pais did not attend the NASA workshop. This is where that source comes from. I spoke to him, and at least he claims he didn't. Could be wrong. Okay, and then let's see. Anything else? Oh, this is also interesting here. Aside from NASA, academic and independent laboratories have been researching the same principles and approaches the Air Force and other military laboratories have been looking into for decades. Guys, what private individuals do you think have been looking into the same stuff that the Air Force has been looking into? Anyone want to guess in the chat? I think you only need one guess probably. Let's see. One of the most commonly researched areas is in hypothetically reducing an aircraft's mass using electromagnetism, preferably to zero. And several Lockheed Martin researchers have been involved with quite a few theoretical studies into altering inertial mass. See Haida, Roosh, and Pudov. Ruda and Heish again. Ruda and Heish again. And Woodward, Mahood, and March also. So now we're talking about warp drives. Now we're talking about manipulating space-time to make wormholes. Now we're talking about we've got the lasers, we've got the superconductors, we've got all the material science we need. Now we need to start manipulating space-time. Basically, all the main people are getting shout-outs. You even have shout-outs to Potklinov, Ning Li here, Modenese. I mean, this is a really well researched document. And then here's the last one. In 2010, an Air Force-funded study at the University of Florida leveraged these principles to design and test a wingless electromagnetic air vehicle, which was claimed to employ no moving parts and assures near instantaneous response time. The study writes that this vehicle is designed to support the Air Force Research Laboratory's strategy to deliver precision effects, ubiquitous swarming sensors and shooters by 2015 to 2030. So they had a plan going down to 2030, but it's just gone dark. Doesn't exist anymore, chat. Doesn't exist anymore. My guess is it doesn't exist anymore because they teleported a Boeing 777 and they got caught. And they got caught. So therefore, the project had to disappear. The study was able to produce a disk that was able to hover a few millimeters above the surface for a sustained duration, about 3 minutes, and noted that prototypes of various radiuses were also successfully flown, demonstrating that WEAV is scalable. We only need the orb to be able to fly around for 2 minutes. Not even 1 minute is enough time. 3 minutes is more than enough time for what we've got going on in our videos. And they can even say that the radiuses are scalable. My guess is this thing is not it's not a disk. It's not a disk. That WEAV is not a disk, chat. Yes, maybe the material is a disk, but when you see that thing flying around the sky, I almost guarantee it's an orb. I almost guarantee when that's flying around and the plasma's around it, it's an orb. You have to keep in mind what you are seeing visually with your eyes is not necessarily what you are seeing inside of the object. These things are covered in plasma. They're covered in plasma. That's the whole point. The whole point is for it to be covered in plasma because that's lets reduce the drag and control the flow of the electrons as they come in through the inlet to slow them down. Okay, I think, let me take a look here. Here's James Woodward here as well, talking about a PZT, lead zirconate titanate. Isn't this piezoelectric compound? Isn't this, there's something special about this too. I don't remember. Oh, it just keeps going and going and going. I think Eric Davis gets a shout out in here at some point. Let's take a look. Let's see. We have some new things. This is Lockheed Martin right here. This is Ben Rich. We have some new things. We are not stagnating. What we are doing is updating ourselves without advertising. There's some new programs and there's some certain things, some of them 20 or 30 years old, that are still breakthroughs and appropriate to keep quiet about because other people don't have them yet. That's from 1994. Let me zoom in. Make sure you guys can read this. We have some new things. Lockheed Martin, director of Ben Rich, Lockheed Martin, director of Skunkworks. We have some new things. We are not stagnating. What we do is updating ourselves without advertising. There are some new programs, and there's some certain things, some of them 20 or 30 years old. This would be the 60s or 70s, perfectly coinciding with Louis Witten, that are still breakthroughs and appropriate to keep quiet about because other people don't have them yet. They just said what they did. No one's listening to the words that they say. Ben Rich literally said they're classifying it and they're keeping it secret because nobody else has it yet. So when are we going to get it, chat? How are we going to get the United States to admit they teleported MH370? When everybody has it, then they'll admit it. When somebody pulls it out, then they're going to admit. They're not going to admit it before somebody else gets it. So apparently I've got to expose all the technology so that the world knows it exists, and then we can admit that MH370 got teleported by some magical plasma orbs. With this in mind, it is possible there are certain technologies in existence that once were, but may no longer be things of science fiction. Wow. Well, chat, that is pretty wild. Let me play the Ben Rich clip. I think I have it. There you go.
Flyer from the School of Engineering inviting me to a lecture by Ben Rich.
Ben Rich was the director of Lockheed's Skunk Works for 16 years. He oversaw a number of USAPs that were secretly managed at the Skunk Works, including, most notably, the development of the F-117 stealth fighter.
Ben shared a slide set of about 40 slides of different things, starting with the U-2 spy plane, going all the way up to the stealth fighter at that time, mentioning that he couldn't talk about the other secret stuff. But when he ended his talk, he had a slide of a black disc zipping off into outer space. And he ended his talk with these words: "We now have the technology to take ET home."
So you have to have vision, and you have to have the guts and the courage to go out past the steps and do something of any value. And we have to go past our grasp.
And we asked him questions about it. What did you mean when you said we have the technology to take ET home? Ben shared three major things that I think are worthy of research by researchers worldwide at this point in time. First was, we've somehow figured out how to do interstellar travel already. It's known. The second point he made was that there was an error in the equations. My suspicion is it's probably Maxwell's equations for electromagnetic theory.
Scalar potential.
The third thing he said was, how does ESP work? And I was really kind of startled because I didn't know what to say. But I blurted out, I don't know, all points in time and space are connected. And he looked me back in the eye and he said, that's how it works.
Exactly. That's how it works exactly. All points in space and time are connected. That's the secret, right? All points in space and time are connected, guys. Okay, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream tonight. We got a moment of Zen tonight, actually. We got a moment of Zen. Here we go. Let's see what we got.
We entered this podcast stuff not knowing much about podcasts, so they put us in the science category across all these platforms, and they rank these episodes. So we have the #1 science podcast in the United States. I could see Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's no friend of the UFO topic, is #6 on that list. Thinking he's looking up and going, what the hell? Who are those guys? Anyway, it's very satisfying.
It's very satisfying. Chat, when Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp are the #1 spot on the science podcast competing with Neil deGrasse Tyson, you know science is in a very, very, very bad way, chat. Spread the word. Get the science out. ZPE Disclosure 2025, chat. Love y'all. Hope you guys have a great night. Peace out, everybody. Later.
Infrared eyes, scanning the black, tracking the heat, never turning back. Control 22, a covert gaze. Control 33, in the cosmic maze. Controls in the mix, secrets untold. Silent watchers, brave and bold. In the shadows, they silently glide, protecting our interest, far and wide. As Spears, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star. In the silence of space, they keep their post, shields unseen yet feared the most. With precision and speed, they warn of danger, keeping us safe from the missile's anger. As Beers, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star. Controls in the mix, secrets untold, silent watchers, brave and bold. In the shadows, they silently glide, protecting our interest, far and wide. As Beers, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star. As Beers, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star.
Oh, I didn't end the stream. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everyone.